Hey, y'all, and welcome to the very first episode of the Reinventing Andrea 2.0 podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Lea. Now, you may know me if you listen to my true crime podcast called Mystery, Murder, and Mayhem. And if not, you should check it out. It's everywhere you'll find this podcast also. Now, I started my journey of getting approved for gastric bypass way back in March of last year, and I thought it might be cool to start another podcast to detail my journey from the beginning, just to inform others of what the process is like. And I mean, who better to get, your information from or whatever than somebody who's actually gone through the process, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, I'm probably going to say this again in this podcast, but this is my experience. I live in South Carolina, so I have learned over the months since I started this that every state has different requirements. Every surgeon has different requirements, and every insurance has different requirements. So this is just what I've gone through. But you know, do your research too if it's something you're looking into. But anyway, let's get started with this. Now, um, just so you know from the beginning, this is a one-woman operation. And I don't have writers, editors, sponsors, at least yet, or any of the other fancy stuff. I write my own content, record it in my bedroom with my dog, edit it myself, and don't make a dime off of this or my true crime podcast. And it's mostly just something that I do that I enjoy as a hobby. Now, be sure to check out the links in the episode description for my social media pages. Now, I also want to add right here that, like I said earlier, this is my experience and experiences will vary. And I have learned along the way that from talking to others that the process varies from surgeon to surgeon, state to state, insurance to insurance, and patient to patient. And like I said, I already said that, but it's very important. But now that all that's out of the way, let's talk about in the beginning part. Now, first, I want to make sure that you know that I didn't go into this blind. I knew what I was getting into. I had actually been thinking about doing this since sometime around 2010. So, yeah, that's been almost 14 years ago. And as a matter of fact, I would make appointments for my initial consultation and then talk myself out of going because I kept telling myself I could do it on my own. Actually, I even went to one of those informational seminars that a doctor had one evening, and although my insurance wouldn't cover, or it would cover the surgery at that time, it didn't cover the $400 psychological evaluation that was required. And at that time, I had 3 little kids. Like I said, this was back in 2010, somewhere around that time. So I had 3 little kids that I was raising on my own with no help from anyone, so that that $400 just wasn't something that I could afford to spend on myself. And the funny thing about being overweight is that you never think that you're as big as other obese people around you. Because I sat at that meeting that I went to that night thinking, geez, I'm just so glad I'm not that big. But you know what? I was. And I was actually bigger than some of those people that was there that night. Well, after that seminar, I went home kind of sad, but I thought, you know what, you can just lose the weight for on your own. You don't need surgical help or whatever. And you know what, I did. It took a while, but my starting weight back then was 311 pounds. And by 2015, I had managed to lose around 126 pounds. I worked out a lot, changed the way I cooked my food, stopped eating all the stuff that's bad for you, and the pounds came off, but they didn't stay off. Now, you may ask why, and I know this just sounds like an excuse, but it's true, because while you can shrink your body, you have to work on your mind. You got to get your head right, honestly. Now, weight loss, it's as much or more about mindset than it is like the nutrition and fitness. Now, don't get me wrong, all that goes with it, but your head has got to be in the right place for it to work for you. And I know that now. And I also know that after surgery, I could still gain the weight back. But I just want to say that my head is in a lot better place than it was in 2015. And at that time, I was coming out of a very abusive relationship, and I used food for comfort. And I've since gone through therapy and continue to keep in touch with the counselor at my surgeon's office. All right, so back on track. Now, back in February of 2022, my daughter's friend had gastric bypass. And by Halloween of that year, honey, y'all just wouldn't believe how she was looking and feeling. She came by the house during trick or treat with her son, and she was telling me how she feels so much better and she has so much energy. And I actually even saw her run to catch up with her son, who was making his way to the house next door. And the rest of the time that I was sitting there handing out candy to the little kids, I thought about her results and everything for the rest of the night. And I knew that if I was still thinking about it by the next day, I would have to take action. And I did. But you know what? I didn't go to the first consultation that I had scheduled. Y'all, it wouldn't be until March 15th of 2023 that I would finally go for the consultation. Now, when I got there, there was maybe 5 other women there, and the information, it was very in depth. They had a Q&A session for any questions that we might have, and those of us who decided that we wanted to move forward to the next step, we went to the receptionist desk to make appointments for meeting with the surgeon. Well, that appointment for me was on April 6th, 2023, and when I got on the scales, when the nurse was checking me in, that was the first time that I had actually looked at the numbers. I really don't even know what that emotion was there to describe it, but I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't a positive one. It was very, very depressing, and that was the most I had ever weighed, and I was just so disappointed in myself. So on April 6th of 2023, I weighed 333 pounds. And again, like I said earlier, I didn't feel like I was that big. You that's the thing, is like, you can be big, but unless you look in the mirror, and I had a habit of avoiding mirrors at that time, um, I just didn't feel like I was that big. And I mean, I had all the aches and pains. And if you hear that noise in the background, it's Ariel messing with her harness. It's like when you sleep in a bra and your one of your boobs come out. That's how she kind of woke up, and I got to fix that. But anyway, I had all the aches and pains that reflect that much stress on your body. And definitely the comorbidities was there, like high blood pressure and pre-diabetes. But I was just so shocked to see that number. Now, after the nurse put me into the room, she got some more information from me, and then she left. Now, it wasn't long after that, because this doctor's office is fast. I have never had to wait hardly more than 5 minutes to get put into a room and then see the doctor or nurse practitioner or whatever. But anyway, soon my surgeon, his name's Dr. Love, he came in the room, and from his introduction, I just knew, for whatever reason, that I had chosen the right surgeon in that practice. Everybody in that practice is just fantastic. They're kind to the patients, and they're so patient with all of my questions. And trust me, I've called my nurse and care coordinator so many times. I know, or I did before surgery, I knew that they had to be getting sick of me, but they were always just so really sweet. But anyway, me and Dr. Love, we talked about which procedure would be right for me, and together we chose the Roux-en-Y procedure because of the amount of weight I need to lose and because I have acid reflux. People that have acid reflux, GERD, or whatever you want to call it, are not candidates for the sleeve. But honestly, the Roux-en-Y is the one that I had been leaning towards anyway, because I didn't want to have difficulties from the if I had the sleeve, like if I had a hard time losing the weight, or wasn't losing it fast enough, or if I developed, see, at the time that I was trying to choose for myself, I didn't know that having reflux or anything was going to be an issue with having a sleeve. So anyway, like I said, I was leaning towards the Roux-en-Y before I even met with Dr. Love. But as I was getting ready to leave, my nurse met me in the hallway, and she told me that if I lost just 10 pounds, I would only have to pay for 2 weeks worth of the OptiFast products that my surgeon uses for the pre-surgery liquid diet to shrink my liver. Well, 10 pounds might sound a lot, or it might not sound like a lot, just depends on your perspective. But, I thought, hey, you know what? You can do this 10 pounds, and that will save you 2 weeks worth. Because I'm going to tell y'all, OptiFast is not cheap. I want to say for the 2 weeks that I had to pay for, or amount of 2 weeks of OptiFast, I want to say it was close to $300 or maybe just over $300. So yeah, it's pretty expensive. So I made up my mind I was not going to have to do 4 weeks of that stuff, and I was going to lose that 10 pounds. Well, so over the course of the next 3 months, I had to attend 3 WebEx classes and submit my weight. And the classes were very helpful because the topics, they ranged from like how to get started exercising to deciding if you want something to eat because you're either bored or, emotional, or if you're truly hungry. And I attended those on April the 11th, May the 9th, and June the 13th. Now, another requirement was that I have a psychological evaluation, and I did that on May the 2nd. Now, it made me nervous having to do that because I had no idea what they were going to ask me, and I had no idea how I was going to respond to any of those questions. But y'all, it wasn't even nearly as nerve-wracking as I had put it in my head that it would be. Because, when people say psychological evaluation, you just picture laying on a couch and they picking your brain or whatever. But I didn't have to lay on a couch or anything because mine was actually through WebEx, I believe. It was online. I think it was WebEx that we used. But anyway, she mostly just asked me questions about if I have a good support system at home or around me. And she asked about any substance abuse history, and we talked about my relationship with food. And it really wasn't that scary at all. I have to say that the psychologist that did my evaluation, it was like just sitting there talking to a friend that you've known. She was really easy to talk to. But then following that, on the 11th of May, I had to have an EGD. And what that is a diagnostic test where they put you to sleep and they insert a light and run it down your throat to check your esophagus, your stomach, and your duodenum. And that was probably the best sleep I've ever had in quite some time. It was, when I woke up, I just wanted to go back to sleep because it was such good sleep. I'm not even joking. Now, everything from that test came back just fine. So the last test that I had to have was a blood test to check my thyroid, and that came back good too. Now, I want to say again, you may not have to do all that. You may have to do more. I have heard of some people having to have colonoscopies. Some people have had to go to cardiologists to get their heart checked before surgery. I really think it just depends on your surgeon and insurance and maybe even your state. Now, once the surgeon's office got all that information back, I was set up for my care coordination appointment on June the 22nd of 2023. And basically all that was my surgeon talking to me a little bit more about the procedure. And he also had this cool printout that compared me to other people that are my age, same weight, same height. And it talked about my surgical risk, which were very low. And it talked about the weight loss results that I could expect. See, I'm still not good at talking. And if you've listened to my true crime podcast, you know that speaking is not my strong point, but yet here I am doing a podcast, actually doing 2 podcasts. But anyway, and I weighed in when the nurse first called me back that day. And remember, I said I had to lose 10 pounds. Well, I had lost a total of 15. And I was totally surprised because my scales at home showed that I had lost exactly 10. So I was like, yeah, we're going to have to get new scales so we can kind of keep up with this journey. But before I left the office that day, I was scheduled for my surgery and for my OptiFast classes that I had to take before I started my pre-op liquid diet. Now, my surgery was scheduled for August the 28th, and I was supposed to start my OptiFast classes on July the 26th. But on July the 6th, the surgery coordinator called me and said that they had basically overbooked my surgeon for that day, and my surgery was being pushed all the way back to September 21st. Well, so of course that meant the OptiFast classes wouldn't start until August the 16th. Now, to say I was disappointed was an understatement, okay? But I got over it pretty quick because, for one thing, there wasn't one single thing I could do about it. And for another thing, I was still having the surgery. It wasn't like it had got completely canceled. It just wasn't going to take place when it originally had been scheduled. But that wouldn't be the first time I got my heart broken in this whole process, okay? So when it started getting closer to time for my surgery, I had an appointment, which is called a CPO walk-in. And what that is an appointment with the anesthesiologist nurse so that they can do an EKG and blood work. And it was scheduled for September the 6th. When I got in a room, the nurse went over some medical history, the normal stuff. And then I was taken to another room to do an EKG. And that only took about a minute, and then they put me back in the first room that I had started out in. Well, then another nurse came in, and she looked at me and said, "I have some bad news for you." Well, I just had that EKG, so I thought, oh shit, something is wrong with my heart. But it wasn't that. She goes on to tell me that my surgeon had to cancel his surgeries that were scheduled for September the 21st. And get this, y'all, nobody had bothered to call and tell me that it had happened. It had gotten canceled like an entire week before the CPO appointment. So, to say I was livid was an understatement, okay? Now, that nurse then told me that the surgery scheduler was going to give me a call to get it rescheduled. But if I hadn't heard from her by like the next day, to give the surgery scheduler a call. Well, I left that office and I was pretty mad, but I didn't take it out on that nurse. Of course, it wasn't her fault. She just had to deliver the bad news. But while I was walking to the car, I thought I wasn't going to wait. I'm not going to wait for these people to call me back. I'm tired of things just happening and I have to wait on somebody else to fix it. So when I got in the car, I called the surgery scheduler. She told me that the first available date she had was October 20 something. I can't remember like the exact date. I want to say it was October 28th. And I flat out told her that that was not acceptable because I had already been rescheduled once and I wasn't going to wait that long. And plus that would mean having to buy more OptiFast because at that time I was already on my pre-op diet because I was supposed to be having surgery. But there's also the other things of I had already made arrangements for transportation for my son Nick. He's my youngest, to get back and forth to school. Plus, my daughter was taking time off from work to take me to the hospital and take care of me for the first day or two, after I came home from the hospital. So the scheduler told me that she would have to see what she could do, and she'd call me back by the end of the day, which is 5 o'clock, office hours. Well, 4:45 rolled around, and I hadn't heard anything. So I called her back, and I got her voicemail. And I figured I'd probably just have to wait till the next day. But 10 minutes later, the office manager called me back, and she said that they were able to do some rearranging, and my surgery would take place on September the 18th. So in the long run, y'all, it worked out better because my surgery was happening 3 days before it was supposed to. Because remember, it was supposed to be on the 21st, and that got messed up, and then it ended up being on the 18th. So then I had to go back and finish up my CPO appointment later on. I got that taken care, and all of my nutrition classes or pre-surgery nutrition classes taken care of. And all of that took place during my pre-surgery liquid diet. But y'all, this is where I'm going to stop this episode for now, because the liquid diet before surgery, it deserves its very own episode. So that's what episode 2 is going to be all about. Now, like I said earlier, actually, before I get to that part, I do want to say one thing. You know, a lot of us watch these shows on TLC and other networks about people having weight loss surgery. And I'm not dissing my 600-pound life, because I still watch it. But a lot of stuff on there is dramatized. And a lot of these people, yes, I know that they're usually 600 pounds or more, because that's in the name of the show. But, you know, they have to lose like these big amounts of weight before they can get approved for surgery. But the thing is, nobody that I've talked to has had to lose that much. So I feel like it's just a dramatization. And don't let that, you know, discourage you from, you know, getting your surgery, going through the process. It can be a long process. In South Carolina, the average from the first appointment to surgery is 3 months. But, you know, like I said, mine got rescheduled twice. So mine was a little bit longer. But y'all, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not going to give it away yet. But, y'all, it has been so worth the wait, the process, the following the food program, everything. It's just been worth it. But there's going to be more episodes, and I'm going to tell you more about that later. But anyway, like I said earlier, check out the links in the episode description and come follow my social media pages. I'm most active on TikTok. I have the Facebook page as kind of like a backup type thing, because, you know, every once in a while they keep talking about, hey, let's get rid of TikTok, let's ban TikTok in the United States or whatever. So I kind of have the Facebook page as a backup. And then there's also Instagram. But y'all have a good day. And hey, you know what? Tell your friends about the podcast. You know, get them listening too, because I'm going to chronicle everything I have gone through and continue to go through. And I'm hoping to, you know, in the future have a couple of guests here and there, like share their experiences of, you know, what they've went through with their process of getting approved, and their process of losing the weight and everything. But y'all have a good day, and make sure you come back for episode 2.